strength like no other reaches to me. You are my hope, hope like no other, hope like no other.
Good morning, and welcome to the program this morning. I have a wonderful smile on my face. It's getting bigger because of a story I just heard. But anyhow, welcome to the program this morning. This morning I am with, and I almost said it again, but I might. So this morning I am with Reverend Samuel Byam. And the reason I'm smiling, good morning, Reverend.
Good morning, good morning. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you here. It's been a while, isn't it?
It's been a while, yes.
Yeah, actually, maybe it's only twice when you came on the program.
I remember once. I don't know.
It's only once?
I think so. I can't remember being here twice.
So maybe,
before.
Seeing you in and between.
Yes,
made
possibly.
me think. Yes, yeah. I remember that first time that you came.
Yeah.
Of course, we discussed your age.
Yeah.
And this morning we'll be discussing something slightly different. But your name.
Right. Right.
So I nearly did it again because I am so familiar with calling you Tim.
Yes.
But interestingly, I got the story. Well, because it's not a secret, I just remember asking you that.
Yeah.
You could share it. So how Tim reached in the picture?
Tim, that name Tim was given to me from before I was born.
Mm-hmm.
My mother told me that when she was pregnant with me in Trinidad, the property in Trinidad that my father had, he was planting a lot of mango trees. Mm-hmm. And she was watching him plant it, and she said to him, well, why are you planting so many mango trees around the property? Mm-hmm. And he turned and told her, look, when Tim and Tot come, they will climb the trees. And so that name, Tim...
Just
right. So when I was born, I said, well, okay, Tim is here.
Right. So you went along with that name?
I went along with that name. Well, my father died. And my mother, being Grenadian, she took my brother and I back to Grenada.
So people used to call him Todd?
Yeah? Well, they didn't call him Todd. Because I suppose they were fascinated with Tim.
Yeah.
So the name Tim stuck. But anyway, it's not until probably when I was about, say, I mean, everybody called me Tim, and so on. So it's when my mother decided that at about 10 years old, we decided to open a bank account, a savings account at Cooperative Bank, which I still maintain to this day.
Hey, you're advertising for Coop.
And after opening while opening the account, she said to me, listen to me, your name is not Tim. Your name is Samuel. I said, what? I mean, it grieved me so much that I didn't like the name Samuel at all. Tim was a more, But I said, Samuel, mommy, and that stuck with me, But I still went along with the name.
With Tim. So Tim is no way on your birth certificate?
No, it's not on my birth certificate.
That is so weird. Because, I mean, I was so proud. Even in your phone, I have you in my contact as Tim.
But that's fine. That's fine. No,
I'm sure many persons are calling you Tim.
Yes.
Reverend Tim.
Yeah. They call me Reverend Tim. But so unofficial business.
Yeah, definitely. You have to go with Samuel.
But I will answer the name.
Listen to me, but when I hear, because I've heard, of course, you say, refer to yourself as Samuel before, but I just say, oh, maybe that's his second name. Yeah. So I never paid any attention to Samuel. And I'm sure many other persons haven't as well.
That is
been
true.
So,
yes.
So here, what, for those of you who know Tim, Tim is Samuel.
Yes.
Tim is Samuel. No, but it's just so interesting. I could imagine how many other persons have similar testimonies about their
names.
A lot of people, I'm sure. Even though, but don't ask for false name, but let me leave that for Gloria, because if we start with false name, how did we come up with it? That's a whole story all by itself. But anyhow, well, thank you for that. So I'll try my best to remember. Reverend Samuel, yes.
Yeah, Reverend
Samuel
Mr.
Byam.
Samuel Byam. That's all it is. But, I mean, I will answer to the name.
But of course, I mean, you grow with him. That's
I'll
what
go
we
with
do
that.
here.
Yes, yes, yes.
But today, because I mean, I know that you officiate at the Anglican Church and all of that, but we're not talking about that this morning. You are in the here in the capacity as a builder. Well, or should I say engineer?
Engineer, builder, anything like that.
Right. The building this morning.
Yes.
So, and I mean, it's really necessary because we see the challenges around, and I'm thinking that you firsthand will be able to assist, because you know the program. The program is to give information that, who knows, maybe people kind of wondering about, right? And this is not, I've given a disclaimer early, this is not us saying that you need to call to him to build your place, although you can. And it's not saying that you must for a contractor, you must for this and you must for that. No, we're just saying that there are some protocols, there are some things that need to be done, and we just want to share them with you. So I have Tim, I have Samuel with me.
Tim. Yeah.
It's just that I'm so familiar with it. I have Samuel with me this morning doing that. So go right ahead.
Let me put forward this. And I've been saying this all along so that people have a better understanding, right, of a building and how it's put together. You know, a building is very much like your structure, like the human being, the human structure. I'll tell you why. All right. You're a short person. You have short feet. I'm a tall person. I have long feet. Right. That's one. Bear that in mind.
Okay,
Yes?
so-
All right. Smaller buildings, right, have smaller foundations. Right? Taller buildings have bigger foundations. Right? Because they have to spread the load. Now, when you look at the structure, the skeleton of a human body, all bones are joined together. Right? This bone connect, there's a song about it.
Yes,
this bone connect to that bone, and the hip bone, thigh bone, and right. The building, it's connected throughout. Like, for example, the foundation, right, is like the feet of the building. Right? The taller the structure, the bigger the feet. The smaller the structure, the smaller the feet. But all other things has to be taken into consideration, right? Like the type of soil, and if you're building in sandy, loamy soil or rock, you know, but the thing about it is to remember that if you have a small structure, there's no need to have a big foundation, right?
Right.
Now, when you're coming up, a building consists of, and I'm talking, well, any structure anyway, you're talking about columns, right? The columns are like the legs. They stand on the columns, right? And then you have the beams. The beams are the structure, the skeleton,
Right.
right? So you have, and all the columns are joined to the beams, and the beams hold up the floor and hold up the roof, right? And so on. So when you take the skeletal remains of a human and you compare that to the building, you can see the similarities. That in a structure, in a building structure, beams and columns and so on must be connected for stability.
Right.
Right? And it's the same thing with the human body. There is connection for stability. Right? So, and then we have other aspects that come into it, right? So you have the structure, columns, beams, and so on and so forth. Okay. After that, what comes? Blocks. Now, blocks has no strength.
It doesn't.
Doesn't have any strength when it compares to building.
Okay.
Blocks gives you, it's like flesh. That's why when you're building, you must put steel in the block pockets. That's why the pockets, the blocks have pockets in it. When you take a 6-inch block, right. So in the pockets, you put steel and you put concrete to give you that strength. But the blocks is like the flesh. Right? It has no strength, has no flesh. Right? And the blocks cannot play a structural role. The blocks is just to fill in, right? So the blocks are there like the flesh of the building, right? And the blocks are now connected, right, to the main structure, right, through mortar, whatever, it is the same thing, right? The flesh is connected to the bone and what have you, right? But then you go on, there is the services. Now, when I say services, you have the plumbing and the electrics,
Right. Okay.
right? The plumbing and the electrics, let's take for electrics, for example. The electrics can represent the nerves in your body, because that is what gives you, right? Your light on, this, that, so it's connected. So, and all of this is like electrical wiring. That is your wiring, that is a house wiring. It's similar, except for the house, you have the switch on light and that kind of thing. That's But the electrics, right? And the same thing with plumbing. The plumbing, now you drink water, it goes through the system, the digestive system, and then it goes through, when you flush a toilet, it has to go out. So, so exactly. So once it comes out, then you have the external part to deal with the waste. Right, the same thing with the human body.
Wow.
You see?
I never looked
at
it that
way. But you see, once you look at it that way, right, if you put in a structure together, you have to remember that there must be some connectivity. The first thing is the structure, beams and the columns and stuff, right? The second thing, the blocks, right? And I'll go further. When you put up your blocks, what do? You mix your mortar and you render the wall, right? Rendering, right? So you render the wall, and so that's the skin.
What rendering is what we call mortar. When you put on the
when you put on the mortar and you
right.
smooth the mortar, that's equivalent to your skin. The rendering gives you a protection.
Yes.
Right? So the skin protects the body, the flesh, and everything. So you render the building and so on. So you have the skin of the building and so on and so forth. Right? And in the same way, if something...
But then paint is makeup.
You got it. Paint is like the clothes, it's makeup.
Yeah. It doesn't really do much except for
exactly.
Aesthetic.
I mean, you can change your clothes, you can change the paint.
True.
Right? Yeah, but the skin remains. Right? So you have the skin, and you can decorate the skin and paint, and you can put on different clothes and that kind of thing, right? But it doesn't stop there. When you talk about covering, right? When you go out, you need to put on a hat to give you shade. That's like the roof.
Yeah.
The roof protects you from the elements, from the rain, right? From the sun, right? And so on, right? And it gives you some sort of security. It's the same thing. When you put on a hat now, in the industry, you have hats for different reasons. For example, you have a hat for construction hat, which is for protection, right? And then you have hats which protect, all hats.
It's still to protect.
It's still protect, but it's decorate, some of them decorative, you know. Sometimes you have hat that that these ladies, you ladies have fancy hats with, but at the same time, it gives you a form of protection and security. Right? So with the hat on, that's the roof. Now you can't just cut your hat on your head like that, because the minute a wind blows, your hat will go.
True.
Right? So you have to secure that hat. And what do you do to secure it? You tie it down. Your hat have a...
Some people,
Right?
Or you stick a here. You do something.
You do something, you pin it, so that if you go out and the wind blows, you don't lose your hat. But it's the same thing with the building. Once you put the roof on, your roof has to be tied to the structure so that the wind don't blow it away. Right? So once you have that connectivity, the roof and the sheeting and the rafters and so, it's like your hat. If you make a straw hat, you have this and that and the other. and you tie it down so that the wind won't blow it away. Or if you have a cap, it fits tight enough, right, so that the wind don't blow it away. So it gives you protection and at the same time shade, right? So you can relate.
Oh, yes.
Right? So once you are able to relate that, and let me tell you, God, I mean, it's amazing, right, how God works. Because you can see God, like an architect who I used to work with some years ago. He said to me, God is always in the detail, right? And he lived that. He said, God is in the details. Right? And this has led me to think a bit, to expand my mind, right, in terms of how the buildings can relate so closely and we don't realize it to the human structure.
But I never thought of it that way either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? You know? So and of course you can go on and on with the electrics and the plumbing and the, you know, all that.
Everything else.
Everything and that makes the building function. Right? Even when you take the kitchen. Right? Right? And all of that. So, you know, and the functions of the heart, what is the heartbeat of the building? What's inside all these things that keeps the structure going, you know, and stuff like that. So you have the electrics coming from outside, that comes in, you have the electrics inside of you, that keeps your heart pumping and the veins and what have you, and keep you, you know, going. So it's very, very similar.
Wow.
Right? It's very, very similar. And when you take, like when I started earlier on, if you are able to stand on the seashore, where the sand is soft, after standing for a while, you'll find yourself going down. Right? But if you stand on, say, a rock surface, and you stand there wouldn't be any movement. Right? You'll be standing on firm ground.
Yes.
So this is why it's better to put a structure on firm ground. And the reason why you have to dig a foundation, if even you are on firm ground, is for the stability.
Right.
Right? Because in the sand, your foot will sink and so on, you know, and after, but there's still no stability there because it's sand. But once you go on rocky surface, you still need to have a balance, because you could stand on a rocky surface, but the rocks under your feet will not give you stability. So if you want to stand, and you have to carve out an area where you can plant your foot and you stay steady. Right? But I mean, these are things we don't do because we don't stand up on a rock. But for a building, you have to have, right, an area where you can spread the load from the structure to the ground. And that is through the foundation.
Okay, let me ask a question because we're on foundation.
Yeah.
In carving out, quote unquote, carving out an area. In Grenada, we have, well, maybe in our hilly area, we have, I know, I'm asking whether or not in carving out, if it should be, maybe I shouldn't use the word should, but you'll correct me. If it shouldn't be like, you know what I mean, an established, flattened area, as opposed to, for example, maybe not necessarily concrete houses or big houses, but sometimes you would see a house built, especially as I say, on hills, especially on this, right on the face. It seems to me like it's on the face of the hill. It almost looks. And then somebody, so yes, you quote unquote carve out the area in the sense that you just clear the spot. So the whole point I want to get at is the difference between carving out or establishing that place and clearing a spot for you to do, you understand, for you to build. Because as I said, I've seen people say just clear the little area and then you put up. I mean, I don't know how strong or how not strong or whatnot, but as we talk in foundation, if you could address that.
What happens, what should happen, if you have a bit of land and you want to put up a building, you ought to know what is the soil resistance of that of the land. In other words, the structure of the land Because the land, when you excavate, there are different layers. I mean,
Yes.
you drive around and you see where they cut out hillsides, and you notice there are different layers. At the top, there is soft soil,
Yes.
and then you go down to and then you come down. So you have to find a load-bearing capacity equivalent to the building. In other words, engineers will tell you that in order to put up a structure, right, you have to, but what they ought to do is to check the load-bearing capacity of the soil to see if it can take the load of the structure.
So how is that
going to
done?
put up.
I mean, I know it
There-
must be a
there are
test, but how, yeah.
there are tests which you can drive piles
Right,
to test piles, you know, to test the load-bearing.
right.
And they will tell you from instruments and so on how far down.
So if somebody's buying a piece of property, just to interject, okay, then you should do that maybe even first before, especially if you're purchasing.
Well, yes,
To
I
build.
mean, but it depends on what you're building. Now, if you're building just an ordinary single story or two-story residential,
Right,
right? And you can judge for yourself and say, well, look, this area is rocky.
Right,
You
right.
can, you know, and so on. But still, there is a certain amount of excavation that you need to do.
That should be done,
Based on. Now, the thing is, a rule of thumb, right, is that the foundation, right, the depth of the foundation should be equivalent to 1/3 of the height of the building. That's a rule of thumb.
say that over.
Right? The depth of the foundation should be about 1/3 of the height of the building.
Right, and that and the height of the building includes
if you're building-
it includes the pillars.
Yeah, well, if you're building off the ground, say 20 feet,
Right, from roof to,
Yes, yeah.
to where you see the pillars.
right,
Right,
right. So 1/3 of that would be about what, 5 feet,
right.
right? Five,
There's
6
about-
feet,
yeah.
thereabout. So your foundation
Should be that.
should be that deep, but it depends on that's a rule of thumb. And if you get a firm bearing capacity as you excavate, then you may not need to go that depth, 5,
Right,
6 feet.
right.
Usually 3 feet might suffice, 3, 4 feet.
According to what you're building.
According to what you're building. So that's a rule of thumb. But of course, calculations can be done, right? Because soil shifts, the structure of the soil changes. And we have to, in particular in Grenada, we have what you call, Grenada is a volcanic island, right? So you have volcanic rocks to deal with. And you
Right.
have what you call tiff.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody know tiff. You
Tiff,
put
yeah.
the tiff, that kind of clay thing that, and what tiff does is when it's wet, it swells.
Yeah.
When it dry, it kicks up.
Yeah.
Right. So these are other things that has to be taken in consideration when you're putting down a structure. This is why depth is important. Because when you go down, right, the expansion and contraction of the soil is not that great. It happens more on the surface. So this is why when you excavate, you have to go to that safe load-bearing capacity where the weather, where the changes in the weather will not affect it that much. Right? So these are things. And then if your building is not connected properly, cracks develop. In other words, you can't have a bone joining a bone are just held by flesh alone. Because it won't have no it won't have no strength. Right? You can't have like a beam going this way and another beam coming and stopping short.
Right.
No connection.
Yeah.
And then you put a slab over that.
Yes,
You're
sir.
asking flesh to hold structure. That can't work. Right? I mean, it will stay up for a while, but in terms of movement,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, an earthquake or anything, that's a weak point.
Right.
Right? So all these little things have to be taken in consideration. But I think the most amazing thing to me is how you relate, or how one can relate your own structure to a building.
To that.
Yeah, you see. So one of the things too is that we see a lot of structures going up, especially south of the island. We see a number because it has become it's in demand. Apartment buildings. Now, when I was growing up in Grenada, apartment buildings don't exist. Never existed.
Yeah.
Right? And now we have seen the need for apartment buildings, because
Yeah.
before people were saying, well, they will build on stilts, on columns,
To put it downstairs.
and then they'll put it downstairs later on. So when the
Yeah.
children go abroad and come home, they say, but it never works.
Yeah.
I mean, you put it, but the thing is, because of the university, there's a demand for, because I think the university only allows the students to live on campus for 1 year.
Okay.
And after that, they have to find it.
Right.
So this gave rise to, I suppose that's good for the economy.
Oh, yes.
Because it
Yeah.
gives rise to the economy, because there's a demand for rooms and
Housing,
more
yeah.
rooms and housing and that kind of thing. But one of the things that we'll look at is, in my opinion, is that we see a lot of excavation into a hillside,
Yep.
which I don't quite agree with. I think, yes, a certain amount of excavation may be required,
Yes.
but I think one has to work with what one has, you know? And I believe that we can work, I mean, you can work like stepping the structure rather than carving out a whole piece
Yeah.
and sticking in concrete. There may be engineers who calculate and say that that's necessary, but I find it's not working with what you have. Yeah, I think it's working because you want to be more convenient in what you're building, and not working with, because I'm thinking, if, okay, Grenada has land sloping
Yes.
up and down and so on. And if you're putting up, say, a multi-story structure, yes, you may need a flat place, but I still think with the imagination, right, you can work with the slope that you have. And of course, you have to think of parking. Parking can be a parking building in layers and that kind of thing. But one has to look at stepping the structure.
But to cut you, but I believe that it is always going to come back down to the money. Maybe it works out. I could be wrong, that's what I'm saying, maybe.
Yeah, well,
maybe it works out cheaper to
just
carve
dig
out,
out,
just dig out a whole, a space,
Yeah.
and put your structure in, and to you, the problem is solved, regardless of what it does to the environment or anything
But
like that.
that may be so, but I wouldn't swallow that easily. I wouldn't swallow that easily. I think the reason for carving out is to make life easier, rather than work with nature.
But
Might be
but laws, what exists as it, because I mean we're talking building, so as it relates to laws that might even address something like that, are there any laws at all in Grenada that you know of? I mean, being in this industry, that speaks to certain things about the way we build, where and what can be or should be excavated, you know, that kind of thing.
I'm not sure about the laws that govern the types of structures as vis-a-vis the land type and that kind of thing, but there are guidelines.
Okay.
There are guidelines. And I think if one is a true architect, right, and has been given a piece of land to develop, and has taken all the things into consideration, that person will then decide whether they need to do a cutout excavation or do the thing in layers.
Right.
Now, sometimes the client may want a cutout kind of thing, right? But I think it's a matter of striking a balance, right? And I think sometimes it's best to work with what we have,
Right.
right? Because let me tell you something. Some of the buildings I see going up south of the island, right, where they have cut out a hillside and stick in a structure. Where's the cross ventilation? Right? You don't have the natural, because the hillside, you're inside a hill.
Yeah.
Right?
And you haven't taken out, it's not a whole hill you've taken out and made flat. So
Yeah.
now and your back is always a hill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? So there's no cross ventilation. And because of that, you have to depend on air conditioning. And that's, again, is energy.
Yeah. So you come back to being against the environment still.
Exactly, right? And let me interject too. I noticed that there are some buildings that are being built without eaves. Now, I notice people are now going with concrete roofs, which is good. You're making it more hurricane resistant. So,
right.
But there are no eaves. When I say eaves, a hangover.
Yes, I know what an eave.
It's important that hangovers should be considered in my
even if it is a concrete.
Even if it's a concrete, because
roof.
you can have a concrete structure and you have your hangover.
Yeah.
What the hangover does, it keeps the rays of the sun, right, heating up the walls. I mean, the sun moves at angles, right? Usually at the height of the day, right? So what you want is like a shadow coming over, like you're wearing a hat.
Yeah, interesting.
Because if you have the eaves, right, you get the protection, right, of the rays of the sun, right, on the structure. Because next time you go into a building, and in the hot sun, and put your hand on the wall, you'll be surprised to see how hot the wall gets.
Wow.
Right? I'm in my house, sometime in the afternoon, when I put my hand on the wall.
Yeah, and it keeps that heat too.
The heat. And this is because the sun at angle. But it's not as hot because I have an overhang. And of course, what I've also added on was awnings over the windows. That saves energy.
Right.
Because it helps to keep, and when I say save energy, once you put an awning, depending on how it is constructed, your awning over the windows.
Yes.
Right? When rain falls, you can leave the windows open. I mean, you close it when you have driving rain, when you have the wind and so on going. But you can, on a normal, you leave your windows open because you have the awnings that protects and it allows the wind to come in. Because the whole idea is keeping the house cool. Right? So I think a number of things have to be considered, right, when one is putting up a structure.
But then clients don't know this generally. I mean, by and large, the public doesn't know much of this. You build a house, and most of the time we call somebody like you, or maybe when I say like you here, I don't mean necessarily somebody who is very well informed like you. I might be, and I'm deliberately sitting in the place of the individual who want a house bill, and you figure, well, I find Tim look like if he does build big time structure, I didn't think I could afford him, no? That mindset. So I immediately begin to think, well, let me just get, I don't know, whoever is this other person who maybe built a friend of mine house already or whatever, at least the house didn't fall. So you assume the man is cheap enough, or maybe not even cheap enough, but maybe you just know the person as well. But I'm just kind of bringing into the conversation, because if you don't know this, and the person may not know this, because I'm taking it that some builders who may not be aware of some of those things to advise clients.
This is why it's good to go to the professional, because you see what happens is that sometimes people feel if you employ an engineer, an architect, you have to pay a whole heap of money.
Well, that is the thought. Right? It is a thought.
It don't necessarily have to be so, right? And sometimes they get somebody who can draw a plan and they draw something, which may not necessarily, sometimes it works, sometimes it may not work, but there's no guarantee.
But plan in.
But
okay,
that's
so in Grenada, that's what we normally say. Because if I can draw a plan on the computer, because nowadays I see they do it on the computer, right? Yeah. So if and as a matter of fact, I see, this one I think is very humorous, because I see you have it online too, where you have those things already made. I don't know if they actually use these things, because I can't believe you're really going to use it, but I'm seeing them. I don't know much about engineering, but I'm seeing people have things online where it look like, I don't know the little names of those things you always do in plan, but it look like a little door opening. So it's a whole plan.
Yes.
But it's there, and it's telling you, well, you could just buy it for X amount of money. Do they use that?
But I don't know.
I'll show you, okay, off air. But anyhow, back to... But for real, so even if I could quote unquote draw a plan and I know what we think planning.
But this is the thing, is that
so you do it and you send it in, and what if you get through? So then what happens then?
That's the responsibility of the planning authority. the planning authority, they have engineers on board, or they should have. And they should have a group of architects on board who would look at these structures and give their comments and guide the authority as to whether the plans need to be modified or not.
Right.
Or you know, or shouldn't be accommodated. Right? So, but I don't know. I mean, before, I think now they have, I think, maybe a better system in place because of past experiences.
Of course, and hurricanes and all of that.
And
yeah.
that kind of thing. So I think that that as time goes on, right, we would have to improve, right, the way and work more with nature, right, work more with what God has given us, right, rather than just taking the easy way out. The Lord tells us it's not a matter of taking the easy way. Take the narrow road.
Yeah.
Not the wide and
That's all you can say. Because the broad one is just, that's
Yes.
the whole point. It is easy.
And I remember, I'll share a little story with you in shortly after Ivan occurred. The Agency for Reconstruction and Development, I think through the funding of the Canadian government, decided the best way, because you see, the thing is that almost everybody who handled a saw and a hammer became an overnight contractor.
Oh, yes.
Because people wanted shelter.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the main thing, right? The house gone,
Yep.
you have to have shelter. Workmen are not enough to spread around.
Right.
So the minute you can handle a saw and a hammer and so on, you became
Or
a
if you had a fall pen in your portfolio.
Right, exactly. You know? So you became a contractor, not knowing the proper way of putting a structure together.
Yeah.
So what was done, we got a model made, right? A small house of timber.
Right.
And we made a model that fitted in the back of a truck. Right? And we went around to all the different villages in the country.
Okay.
And I remember making presentations as to how you put a timber structure together.
Right.
The bracing and the tying and the same thing with the human.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And how you put the thing. So it gave people a better appreciation. Right? Because, I mean, you have lost your house.
Yeah.
The first thing you want to do is to fix it back.
Oh, yeah.
And you ain't
Yeah.
waiting on no, I mean, you want
Well,
a
you
man
can't
tomorrow.
Yeah.
You understand? So rather than saying, well, look, you need to get qualified engineer, train the people.
Yes.
Right? Say, well, look, this is the correct way of doing things. This is the correct way you put, you know. 'Cause I remember when I first came back to Grenada in 2000 in the year 2000. And, you know, from Jamaica. And fellas used to say, boy, God is a Grenadian, you know. Yeah, I know. When I tell people, look, this is not the correct way of putting things together.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, hurricane, no, come here. When I tell them about hurricane struck, they say, what is that?
Right.
You know, and how God is a Grenadian, hurricane ain't coming here.
And
But
then Ivan came.
Ivan came, and of course, well, people
No
at
barrier,
this
yeah.
age, they have, well, before that was Janet.
Yeah.
You know, as a little boy in Janet, when Janet hit Grenada in 1955. And it leaves a lasting impression. I was not builder then, I wasn't, didn't even know, but it left a lasting impression of what a hurricane can do.
Right.
Right? So when Ivan came, it was an eye-opener for a lot of persons who were thinking, by God, is a Grenadian.
Yeah.
One of the worst things that could have happened was they got in Guyanese to help with the reconstruction. Right? Yes, we appreciated that. We appreciated the help that we're getting from abroad. But the Guyanese never experienced anything a hurricane.
Okay. So they
The
come with a
hurricanes
different type of
don't
mindset.
occur in Guyana. them don't have that. You see what I mean? Trinidad even. So when you go to Trinidad and you see them have structures.
Oh yes, just yeah.
With 3.5 feet, 4 feet overhang, right? That can't happen here in Grenada.
Right.
Because apart from your roof is being like a hut, your roof can also be a kite. Well, a hut can be a kite anyway. Right?
Okay.
You your roof will fly like a kite. And the other thing too, the flatter the roof, right, the easier it is for lifting. Right?
Okay.
I tell you, try it yourself. Take a piece of paper like this, put it on the road,
Right.
right? Let a car drive over it, right? The paper will lift
Just
and
lift
fly,
up. Yeah.
right? Fold a piece of
Crumple it
paper like that, put it like that. A car drive over it. The most it will do is shift like that.
Well, I'll have to try that. You immediately have me in experimentation mode. I have to try that, and I'm going to try to.
Tell you, try it and see. Take a piece of cardboard even, right? Drive over it. The cardboard fly, lift, and gone. But fold it and put it and drive over it.
So once it's 3D, it does something.
It
else?
does, yes. You see, what it tells you with the slope of the roof, that's timber roof, right? The slope, it makes it more resistant to hurricane winds. The flat is, okay, an aeroplane wing. What makes a plane lift? The wings are flat. The wings stretch out and it's flat. And with the speed of it is able to elevate. It's the same thing with a piece of paper.
Hey.
Because it's flat, it can lift. Right? But you never see a plane with folding.
I know, right? Yeah.
Except for when the plane landing, it extends some
Yes,
spoilers
just
to
to-
get
yeah,
it down
to-
and that kind of thing. Right? But these are things that we have to look at.
So let me just take me back a little bit. Would you believe, though, that we are getting close to being out of time? I know, right?
Really?
Oh, yes, really. But you mentioned that after Ivan, you all went around with that little house. No, I don't know if the house discarded.
But it's how much years now?
I know. But the point I'm making, though, raising it back is this. Not really the house, but the technique, the idea that yes, we can say to people, go to Newlo or go to wherever does construction and whatnot. Or what, I don't know what is the name of the course, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We can say that to people.
Yeah.
But the reality is, Ivan or no, hurricane or no, people are still building on their own. Right? Because of the cost, because of many things. And if people don't know, if you are not informed and you are not learned, you are going to make mistakes.
Right.
That's just the reality. So I'm asking whether or not something, whether it be, persons like yourself, I don't know if there's an association in the construction industry or so, if it is that there is something where people can get that kind of practical, it's because one thing for us to talk about it. I mean, this analogy with that, I never thought of that or saw it. But if I can see that practical demonstration, because right now we're fixing and expanding where we are in church. It's a wooden building because, of course, we are renting the property. So the building is ours, but you know how that goes. So you can't put concrete.
Yeah.
But the guy the carpenter who actually has a background in joinery, is the person working on it. And from the time the guy walked onto the property, my God, if I had given that man a few sheets of paper, he would have filled that paper with problems from the original builder.
Okay.
From the line up, from the lining up. Apparently, clearly it went wrong from there.
Right.
And the more he spoke, when I'm looking now, I'm able to see what I was not able to see for years. But the only reason I'm able now to see it, although I've been in the building all this time, thank God, most of it will look, on the burial. But I'm just saying it was because of a lack of knowledge. Because in the first place, I was there when he was building.
Right.
I paid him.
Right. Yeah.
But we didn't know. So and plus the fact that we've been in the building functioning.
Yeah.
But now that somebody clearly with more knowledge, and not just more knowledge, but the first he keeps saying, he said, Miss, this building is not strong enough.
Yeah.
And he began to point out where like maybe the wood would not have been the whole length, you couldn't get it. He supposedly joined. And even, when I look at it, it's like, this is madness. Because you would think of it, it must lock. Well, my dear boy, he just put the 2 pointers. Yes, man. And not only that, and you put it on top of the plate.
Yeah.
And I'm like, now that I'm looking at it, it's like, this is God's mercy that make the whole roof not come on top of. So he now has to go and do whatever he has to do now to straighten it and a whole lot of material that should have been purchased years ago. But I'm just saying all of that to say and to bring home, how can we really, well, more than encourage, but teach people, educate people and sensitize people on things like that, because as I said, whether we like it or not, people are building on their own.
Yeah, but I think that more and more community engagement would need to be done, right? And at this point, especially for people who have been impacted by the recent hurricane. You probably have some lectures going on in Carriacou.
In Carriacou and Petit Martinique,
and Petit Martinique, and as to how you put the proper structures, because people always feel that they know.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Well, my boy felt that you know how much he charged me per day. But anyhow. To give me that, I have to pay, and I'm saying that to say not that I'm vexed to pay the man, of course, but I'm just saying you paid because he clearly charged you as somebody who knew what they were doing. And the fact that somebody come and charge you that kind of money per day is because you thinking, well, they know what they're doing, so you find the money and pay. So So what are you all doing? Well, when I say you all, whether it be, from a church end, or whether it be from a end of, as I say, maybe from engine, I don't know if there is an association of some kind.
There was supposed to be a builders association, but it never got, there was some sort of discussion made, but it never got off the ground. I think there is an engineers association, but I don't think they're very active.
Right.
Because the thing is that I think most of it is finance, how to get, because to have a meeting place, you have to have, right?
Yeah.
I remember while in Jamaica, when I started off as a contractor, I became a member of the Master Builders Association, right? And we used to have monthly meetings. And in the monthly meetings, lots of little things came up, right? In terms of how people put structures together and that kind of thing. And this is where I got most of my experience too, in the field, right? And learning things from other engineers and where we share and so on, and as building contractors. Now, in Jamaica, if you're a master builder, you're considered one of the top builders. Right. And I was a member of that. And the thing with being a member of the Master Builders Association, if you are building a structure, and for example, something goes wrong,
you have the support.
You have the support, right? If you die, right, then the members of the Master Builders Association will come in and assist to get the client what the client needs. So these are things that are important, and I believe that we should I think somebody has to take the initiative, right, to get an association going, right, where you may be having some issues, and you might be able to go to the Master Builders Association, right? There should be somewhere. You can say, well, listen, I have a problem. I've been building the structure, and I need, some advice. I need to know. I don't feel I'm getting, justice for the money I'm spending, and so on. And a member of the association, right, or, the group or whatever, will say, well, okay, we'll look into the matter. Right. So there should be some sort
something like that.
Yeah, something
But that
like
would have to be a private thing, of course.
Well, I won't say private, you know. If a group, I guess it can, the government could probably initiate that. And you can have a group of engineers who would be as consultants.
Right.
With somebody who has a grievance. Because, I mean, things go wrong.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Well, a lot, we know a lot has gone.
Things go wrong. I mean, with the best intentions, sometimes things go wrong. And you have to have, as a person investing in your own building or in a structure, right, what sort of recourse, what sort of assistance, in case of any problems, who do you go to? You know, and I don't know if there is any structure in place for that. I really don't know. But and if it's there, we don't know it. It's not. But there should be, if there isn't, to have somewhere where somebody can go and say, well, look, I am having some issues with the building. And you don't have necessarily, because the first thing people think about is lawyer,
Yeah, but that's still not solving the problem.
That, and I mean, not dissing the lawyers, but still, a number of lawyers don't know anything about building either.
Yeah, that's because you come back to that. You're not the engineer.
The lawyers have to hire an engineer,
still,
and then your fees are increased because you have to hire, you know, to get advice and that kind of thing. But what they need is like some sort of, you know, I don't want to say ombudsman, but something of that sort of thing that can say, well, look, I'm having some worries, some problems, and I need to look into it. It's costing me this, that, the other thing. And where these problems can be addressed, you need to, you know, that.
Right.
So I don't know how it can be structured, but I believe that that needs to be done. Maybe in some other countries, there is kind of, you know, we could follow that pattern,
right?
But we'd have to research it and see, and how accessible it can be to ordinary folks.
Yeah.
I mean, them fellas who build in big structures and things, if anything, they can afford to fire and hire.
No.
They can say, hey, you get out, I bring in another man. But a small person like me and you, we can't afford that.
Not at all.
Right? But we need to have it addressed.
Yeah.
So how do we, what's the path do we take to have these things addressed?
All right. Well, Tim, you're going to have to come back, Reverend Byam.
Tim is fine.
You'll have to come back. I don't know when, but soon, for us to finish this conversation, because all we've chatted about so far is the general, because now we will have to get some tips and advice as it relates to someone now practically being there. I mean, you shared a few things, but from a place of, all right, so you are now the person doing a little thing on your own, like how I was in trouble there. How do we avoid that type of trouble? So we'll talk about that because our time is
time
out.
gone?
Oh, yes. So, but it was wonderful.
I mean, it feels like it was just 5 minutes.
That is what happens, obviously, when you're having a good time and good information is being passed on. So, thank you very much for coming.
It's a pleasure being here.
And it was a pleasure having you. But hopefully we see sooner rather than later on another program. Thank you again. So for those of you who are building, maybe you could, I don't know, Tim, you want to give your number?
Yeah.
Please do, because you might just be saving somebody a lot of trouble.
I am more as a consultant.
Oh, of course, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
we need at least you need the consultation first to know if you're in trouble or not. Share your number and then we shall close off.
Yeah, 407-3316. 407-3316.
All right, so you can chat with Reverend Byam because, trust me, it's needed. For those of you who might be following us from Karakou and Petit Matnik, don't just go just because you need a little help. Try to get help that makes sense. All right, so until we chat again next week, Friday, God's will, I wish you all the best for today and have yourself a really wonderful weekend. Goodbye.
Yeah.